Amazon is a game of economies of scale. And the reason, again, is because if you're not bidding, someone else is. So if you're overly reliant on solely profitability, then you're going to drive less units and less sales, and your profit's going to shrink. So something we're having to talk to brands is like, we have to think more long-term here. We have to drive more units and think more of economies of scale of, yes, we're going to make less profit per sale, but as our organic rank increases, it's going to make up in the long run.
Hello and welcome to Human in the Loop. My name is Cameron Yoder and I am joined today by Destaney Wishon. We're talking about profitability. Now, this is, I would say without a doubt, one of the most strategy-oriented, in-the-weeds discussions that I've had on the podcast thus far. Destaney goes in depth in this episode on what profitability is, why it matters so much, and why it's become such a big focus and conversation as of recent. And Destaney also touches on what influences and impacts your profitability and your advertising today, and what you can do to increase that profitability, and also what you can do to have a more holistic growth strategy for your brand and for your business on Amazon and beyond. And so this is in depth, but I like this discussion also because there's more than just really in the weeds nuanced conversation around e-commerce advertising. There's a lot of stuff here that we talk about that goes into brand development. Destaney's built a successful business of her own, and there are things that she talks about that go in depth on that as well. This is a really good discussion, and this is one of my favorites thus far. I really hope you enjoy it. I highly suggest that you follow Destaney Wishon if you are not yet, so I will link her information in the show notes below. All that being said, let's talk about profitability on Amazon advertising, why it is, why it's important, and what you can do about it. Let's get started. All right, everyone. I am joined by none other than Destaney Wishon today. We were talking about how Destaney just reached 40,000 followers on LinkedIn alone, which is an incredible feat. And I'd say arguably Destaney is one of the most well-known people in the e-commerce industry. Maybe she wouldn't say that about herself, but I think I would say that about her. So today's conversation is all focused on profitability. That's at least the core of what we're talking about. It's a huge part of people's conversations right now, and it will be in the future. But before we dive into that, Destaney, can you just introduce yourself briefly to the audience?
Yeah, of course. Cameron, we've known each other for so long. I would say probably 5 years, like casual knowing each other and friends for a shorter amount of time here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been in this space for going on 7 years now. I've been CEO of initially Better AMS and now Better Media for the last 3.5, 4 years. I don't even, honestly, I lose track at this point.
Time isn't real. No.
No. If you're in e-commerce, something's wrong with you because you stay in it and there's so much chaos. But we were initially Amazon advertising specialists. I think that's what we built the majority of our reputation or our name on, advanced Amazon advertising partners. Recently expanded to some of the other media players in the space. Walmart Connect, looking at a lot with Instacart, potentially going to dabble in TikTok Shop. We'll see. But yeah, retail, media, and all things e-commerce are kind of what I love the most.
Really, really exciting. And I think the interesting twist that you bring to conversations, obviously, is a lot of expertise on the Amazon side, but now being able to talk to all those other areas that you mentioned, that's really, really valuable. So our conversation today is focused on profitability, right? And I want to get into a little bit, maybe from Better Media, build what that looked like to build that towards the end. But around the subject of profitability, Destaney, this conversation, the focus on profitability, I feel like that focus started happening a couple of years ago, if not even the spotlight last year. Things all started to turn on into profitability. What's your perspective on why that's the case, first off?
I think it's really important to just consider the full timeline here. In the early days of Amazon and Amazon advertising, they were working to acquire new sellers. That was their competitive advantage over being in a retail store. Retail store, you have limited shelf space, 20 products per category, right? Amazon was the anything everything store. So their only goal was to attract a ton of different sellers. So fees, inventory, all of that was a lot lower. I mean, there's a ton of different jokes on how much money Amazon was losing year over year. Like, I think most people probably seen that Jeff Bezos interview. And, that was the good old days where you could put in $1 and get $100 out of Amazon advertising. It was amazing. But the platform started picking up in maturity and loyalty, and there was more and more customers, which meant brands had more of a reason to advertise. So advertising costs started increasing a little bit because you got more out of it, more customers, right? More people clicking, more visibility. And then Amazon hit this pivotal point. COVID was a major catalyst. More people are selling. There are more people buying than ever before because you can't go in stores. Right. And now Amazon's like, oh, whoa. Do we need 1,000 people selling toothpaste? I don't know.
No.
Right? I don't think I don't need 1,000 different toothpaste to go. So on one hand, Amazon, I think, realized, okay, we have a little bit of wiggle room to increase fees. We only want the best brands on the platform. And I'm obviously making a few assumptions here about Amazon's leadership team, but that's a big factor. And then on the second hand, you have so many customers going to Amazon that Amazon starts becoming a media behemoth, right? It's no longer about search. Amazon's whole vision with their Thursday Night Football and all of these other acquisitions in the media space, they're becoming way more powerful. So you have the Johnson & Johnsons, the Procter & Gamble's, the Coca-Colas of the world are saying, hey, I need to spend more money over here. And there's a trickle-down effect is they're driving up ad costs. Sellers are seeing more aggressive PPC costs. So I think it's twofold. I think it's driven by customers and how valuable Amazon traffic is to an advertiser. And then the flip side, Amazon increased their fees and decided to provide a different direction.
It's interesting to see, like, if you go back in time and you look at Facebook's, the story behind Facebook and them changing, which Facebook kind of is making a comeback a little bit in terms of like ad spend for some people, but how Facebook started with paid media, paid ad spend, and the direction that it took, just in the sense of it kind of mirroring Amazon and being like the behemoth, the one big player, at least from a paid media standpoint, and how that changed over time as more people came to the platform, things got more expensive, people looked elsewhere. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But things are narrowing in, at least for now, on the conversation of profitability for those reasons that you said, and people are looking to still make money and make more money from the ads, the money that they're putting into Amazon advertising. And the problem is tough to tackle, like the solution is tough to tackle. Obviously, this is a very nuanced conversation, but we're going to take a stab at it today. And this is, I've seen different pieces of content from you before, and that's why I wanted this to be like kind of your subject, because it's hot and because you've talked about this before. So let's kind of break down some different categories, and I'm hoping you can kind of shed some light on it. Let's talk about organic sales and Amazon ads first. Can you outline what the relationship is between those two things and what impact they have on profitability?
Of course. So just high level, where do we even start? High level.
There's like the core,
Yes. A high level, your Amazon advertising influences your organic rank, like in story. And that's because your organic rank and your organic positioning is driven by sales and conversion rate, click-through rate. And Amazon advertising improves and influences both of those if ran appropriately. So I'd say like that's the biggest fundamental thing to consider is the more you spend on Amazon, if you do it well, you will improve your organic rank over time. And that's why it's also important to not possibly pause your ads, because if you're not spending, someone else is, right? So that relationship's super important. But if we start looking at specifics, if over 50% of your sales are coming from ads, that means that a customer is not finding your listing organically. Instead, they're clicking on your ad. And that puts you in a really scary position, because that means that you are reliant on PPC to drive revenue for you. And you typically need to improve your organic rank because all of your positioning is coming from your sponsored product ad. And I'll pause there and see if you have any questions, and we can dig a little deeper as needed.
No, I think we should keep on going. It's fair to assume, though, that people want to increase. Is it fair to assume that everyone can increase their organic ranking though? If everyone increases their organic ranking, what's the flip side of that?
So I think the real difference here is you have to be better than everyone else in the category in one way or another. And I think this is the positioning change that we're seeing with fees and things like that, right? Amazon said we don't need 50, 30-cent toothbrushes on the platform. Instead, we want the best toothbrush. We want the one the customers are very obviously clicking on and buying. And that's why conversion rate is such an important factor here, right? It doesn't just come down to who's spending the most or who's driving the most clicks. It's what do customers want the most? Now, there's two ways to approach having a better conversion rate. You can lower your price. Of course, customers like cheap things, but that's just a race to the bottom. And a manufacturer is probably always going to be able to, list something at a cheaper price than you. So instead, you need to focus on how you drive more value, right? How do you have a better product than everyone else? How do you have your listing so well optimized and so niche to your specific audience that it converts 10% than the rest of the category? Then if you're converting better than everyone else and driving the same amount of traffic as everyone else, your organic rank will improve quicker than everyone else.
That makes a lot of sense. I could see people being honestly fearful to let go of the advertising as a reliance. Like, and one, I could see people seeing advertising as a reliance on the machine to like stay afloat, right? You got to keep your ads on so your rank doesn't drop. So you like the example you gave, like 50% plus of their sales coming from ads. But on the flip side of that, I could see people being scared to do that as well. What would you say to those people that are like a little fearful to let go of the advertising to focus on, or what would you say to those people? But I think my real question is like, how much are you weighing organic ranking in the process of optimizing ads for people?
Here's why I think it's important is because Amazon advertising is really out of your control in certain regards. And what I mean, and I used this example earlier, is again, let's say 50% of your sales are coming from ads and you're running at 10% tacos. You're happy, great tacos, good position. You decide, I'm going to keep all this profit in my pocket because everything's running well and I'm not going to improve my listing. I'm not going to invest in amazing content and SEO. I think it's okay. The moment a competitor goes and raises a round of funding and gets an additional $30 million and they decide to increase their bids in your category, your ads are going to start performing different because now your CPCs are so much higher because Coca-Cola is competing or Pepsi or Johnson & Johnson is playing in your category. And now you're in a defensive position because you're not winning the exact same auction that you used to 5 years ago.
Right.
You have to bid so much higher. Now your tacos is increasing because your ad costs are increasing, all because of a competitor in the market. So this is why I think like it's not great to rely on PPC because things change so quickly. It's the same thing as like you said, everyone ran to Facebook because the return was amazing. It got really competitive because the return was amazing. People diversified. It's the same thing on Amazon. You have to be willing to know when to diversify.
Yeah. That's good. So in the sense, I want to tie this back to profitability. So in the sense of organic, the focus here is like mostly organic and how it plays into this, right? So organic is important because of that weight difference of reliance on paid media versus organic sales, important for future-proofing your brand and your business. But in the sense of profitability here, organic sales, just thinking about paid media and whatnot. If you have more organic sales, your profitability is just going to be greater.
100%.
Like that's the simple connection here.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I don't know if you wanted to say anything else on that, but I just want to.
I think a lot of people get caught up in also short-term versus long-term thinking. Amazon is a game of economies of scale. And the reason, again, is because if you're not bidding, someone else is. Like at the end of the day, right? It's like super simple. Someone's going to take advantage of that. So when we first started 5 years ago, tacos was 0 to 5% across the board. Because CPCs were so cheap, you could spend a little, it drive a lot of sales. COVID hit, and we saw tacos go from 7 to 10%.
Hmm.
Post-COVID, last 2 years, I think we're at closer to 10 to 15% is a high growth brand across the board,
wow.
right? So again, if you're not spending that, someone else will, which means they're going to get that top position. On the flip side, something else that we see is that brands who are like, no, I only want to be a 5% tacos, their organic rank's dropping. And
Wow.
it's dropping because their competitors are driving more sales at the same conversion rate we mentioned. And what happens when your organic rank starts dropping is you have to cut back on spend, right? Because your total sales are dropping. So now in order to maintain that tacos, you're dropping in spend. And then as you spend less, your organic rank drops more and more. So if you're overly reliant on solely profitability, then you're going to drive less units and less sales, and your profit's going to shrink. So something we're having to talk to brands is like, we have to think more long-term here. We have to drive more units and think more of economies of scale of, yes, we're going to make less profit per sale, but as our organic rank increases, it's going to make up in the long run.
So part of this conversation with brands then has to be unpacking this pure focus on increasing profitability for the sake of potentially decreasing profitability to a degree. It's probably different for every brand and for every budget and whatnot, but potentially playing around with decreasing that for the sake of organic rank and long-term growth potential.
100%. And, I have a lot of people, someone came to me on LinkedIn the other day and was like, my job is to sell units on Amazon and not build a brand, or my job is to make money as a seller. And I'm like, well, okay. Like, love that for you. But, and they were like, they're like, I'm not advertising, I'm maximizing profit per unit. And I said, okay, when your listing drops to page 2, you're not going to be selling any units, like at the end of the day, because Amazon is a flywheel. Amazon wants more clicks on your listing, more sales, more eyeballs, and more ad spend. And if you don't play their game, like, that's fine. You're going to make $100 a unit in profit, but you're going to sell 1 unit because you're on page 3 and nobody goes to page 3.
No one goes to page 3. You kidding me? I don't go to page 2. Oh my goodness. No. I'm going to find it on page 1 or in an ad somewhere.
Yes. So that's why, like, it's philosophical, but know what your objective is on Amazon. If you want to maintain an Amazon presence, you have to play by their rules in the day.
Yep. It is this is a little bit of an offshoot, and I want to keep on going because we have, we might not get to every single category here, but that's okay. Is people's focus on profitability, like this hyper fixation on profitability, is that the right fixation, or is there a better fixation that you think people should have?
I'm going to bring it back to that root question of, like, what are your goals? As a seller or a solopreneur, you obviously need to be hyper fixated on profitability so you can afford to buy your next round of inventory, right?
Yep.
But if your long-term goal is to build a brand and expand into retail and have a loyal following, that's when you have to start shifting a little bit more long-term. You have to start considering brand building initiatives and things like that. So that's kind of the question we always have. Like, I'll have sellers come to me and say, I want to grow 20% year over year, but I want to decrease my, like, A cost. I'm like, well, let's take
that's
another
a bit
one.
Ambitious.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a good deconstruction of the process and the mentality here, because profitability has been a big fixation. Well, let's move on to another category. So let's talk about, this is a big one, and we can try to distill this down to simple steps and simple like analysis. But bid management is such a big aspect of profitability. Let's just start with why is bid management such an important aspect around this conversation of profitability?
Love this question. Bid management is the most important lever in profitability in Amazon advertising. End stop. Not budget, not keyword research, bid management. I have no doubt. And the reason being is, when you are bidding on a keyword, all it is real estate. Like that's it. You want Beverly Hills views, you want a mansion in Malibu, you bid really high and you are going to be at the very top of the page on Amazon. Now, can everyone afford that? No. Some people need less traffic. So they need to maybe, get a house in Arkansas where I'm at, where you're not going to have as amazing views. You may show up on the product detail page of someone with low traffic, but you can afford it, right?
Mm.
People sometimes think budget's their main lever, that keyword's the main lever, but it's not. Your bid and your ROAS are 100% correlated. So if you want a 20% ACoS, it really comes down to your bid. And then once that's optimized, you can then layer in budget on top of it. But a lot of people, come to me and say, hey, I want to be number one at the top of the page. I'm like, okay, are you willing to pay $10 a click? And they're like, no, I'm like, that's all this is. It's a real estate game. You want to be top of the page, you bid really high. And then your conversion rate's kind of the next step, right? If you're converting at 100%, you can afford that. If you're not, you won't.
It's a really good precedent to set for bids. I think whenever people have a conversation around bids, it gets very overwhelming very quick. And the whole conversation, anything having to do with nuanced advertising does, because it's gotten so intricate and so much more advanced over time. Like truly, it's become just a beast in and of itself. Is it realistic? This is a tough question to answer, but is it realistic to expect people to figure out bid management and optimization on their own? Is it realistic?
I would truly say not everyone. I mean, some people just don't get it. And I do think that there's not great educational materials out there, for being honest. I'm good at breaking things down into concepts and helping explain these details, but it's taken me 7 years, and I've managed hundreds of millions of dollars of spend to get to the point where I can articulate it. And this is where I think, starting to talk about a software is such an important conversation, because bid management is fundamental. I always say, like, if you're running your Amazon advertising without bid management, it's the number one mistake you can make. If you know how to do it by hand, fantastic. If you know how to do bulk, fantastic. If you don't know either of those, you have to use a software. Doesn't matter if you're, anything else, campaign structure, keyword research, like bid management is the most important variable. And like you said, we now have placement modifiers. We now have the opportunity to run day parting with Amazon Marketing Stream or native in Ad Console. And those are all variables that crack me up, because I have sellers come to me and like, hey, why aren't we running week parting or day parting? And I'm like, do you understand bid management? No, but this is something I saw I should do. And I'm like, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So like everyone thinks they know. And I think brand owners also get really close to their category or their brand, but
of course,
we've seen so much data and so many insights, and it has gotten so much more complex.
I don't want to go too in depth here, because like literally this well no and this amount of depth is really good, and this is a good level. This is great. I think that with a risk of, well, we could do a whole episode on this, right? Like just exploring bid management. But I want to like take one step deeper, and I want to try to help people like understand the relationship that, like, some examples of how bid changes and bid management can really help positively impact and influence their profitability.
I've got it.
Let's go.
So, again, like using my real estate example, let's take a term like a category I'm familiar with, protein. Someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to drive a ton of sales for the word protein. I'm like, okay, we need to be at the top of the page, right? Top of the page gets the majority of clicks and all of the views on Amazon. So in order to bid, or in order to win that placement, you have to bid high. So I'm probably bidding $10 to $20, right? $10. So if I'm paying $10 a click, $10, second click, $20, third click, $30. And I probably have a $30 product, right?
Yep.
So I only have 3 clicks at $30 in spend. Hopefully someone orders. And if they do order, I'm breaking even. I spent $30 and I drove $30 in sales. They can't afford that. So I'm like, okay, maybe we lower our bid. So let's say we lower it to $2. Well, now we're not showing up anywhere near the top of the page because we can't afford it. Now we're showing up on page 2 or someone's product detail page, which means we're getting a lot less visibility. Not as many people are seeing us, right? Or our real estate location's not as good, but now it's only costing me $2. So when someone clicks, it's $2. Someone clicks again, $4. Someone clicks again, $6. But let's say they buy my $30 product again. I spent $6. I drove $30 in sales. that is a profitable keyword and a profitable ad. The trade-off was I'm in a less visible placement, so I'm not getting near as much traffic, but it's okay because it was similar or better profitability.
Yeah. Okay. And the trade-off, like, let's say, just to reiterate this point, in what case would you say, let's say they can't afford it, being at least somewhat, again, so nuanced, but they can't afford to be at the top of the page. They're paying way more, breaking even or losing money for a period of time on those ads on page one. The advocation there is, yes, you're losing money, but that will it will not be profitable for a period of time, but it will positively impact things organically.
Yeah.
Correct?
And that's kind of the balance that you make with bid management. There's some terms that you're converting so well on that you still want to win those placements, even though you might take a loss. Because you're driving sales. And as we know, the more sales you drive, the more customers that leave reviews, the more reviews, the better your conversion rate, the more clicks and sales you get, the better Amazon's algorithm wants you to be on the page.
Right.
When does Amazon make money? When people buy a product or when they click on an ad. So they want the best products at the top of the page, the products that are going to drive the most sales and the most clicks. So using that protein example, it's very likely that we would run protein in a profitable campaign with low bids and protein in a competitive campaign with high bids, and we would move our budget depending on what we want to accomplish.
Props to any brand that tries to tackle this on their own, but I just don't think it's
that's not even getting into the weeds. That's no placement modifiers, no day parting, nothing.
Oh, we haven't even scratched the surface.
No.
Oh my gosh. I think one natural category, the next category to like talk about, is conversion rate. And you outlined the importance of this before. It's outlined in this example of, man, it's realistic. It becomes real for people listening and watching when you're like, oh, sheesh, $10 for one click on my ad. And it's like, you better hope that you're going to convert. If you're doing $10 for a click, you better hope your listing is like good, right? And encourage people to convert. So I think I think people understand the importance of conversion rate here and how it plays into ads. I think perhaps, well, maybe not. Maybe I should just open the door there. Like, if you were to reiterate how important that is to people, to connect it to profitability, what would that be?
I think PPC's core job is to drive someone to your listing. Truly, at the end of the day, it's to get a click. Like that's the job.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So someone will come to me and be like, hey, I had this keyword with 30 clicks, but no sales. And I'm like, why did a customer click on your ad, but not buy? And they're like, what do you mean? As a customer, Cameron, how many times do you just go to Amazon and just click on a ton of things? Like,
I don't click around a lot on Amazon.
No.
I don't.
You click when you want to buy.
Is that the right answer? No.
That's exactly. Customers click because your main image was great and your price point looked fantastic. And then they looked at your listing and decided not to purchase.
Yep.
And that's what PPC should be looked at as. So when I'm looking at a pay-per-click campaign and someone's coming to me and like, hey, I have 30 clicks, but no sales. It's like, okay, PPC did its job. It drove the click.
Definitely.
And that's important to remember because, again, your conversion rate starts playing into that as well. The more sales you can drive per click, the more profitable your ads are going to be based off the math that Cameron and I just laid out. It's directly correlated.
So what do you see when it comes to conversion rates for brands? What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making?
Advertising too early. A lot of people don't realize if you go into advertising console, visualizing it, and go to the left-hand side, you'll see a tab called Insights and Planning. If you click on Insights and Planning, you'll see a button called Brand Metrics. If you click on Brand Metrics, it'll give you a category drop-down, and it says See Detailed Metrics. You can click on those two. And it'll give you your conversion rates compared to the category median for any category that you're selling in. And it's retail data, which is organic, and advertising data. And every time we audit a brand, the first thing we look at is, are you converting close to your category median?
Nice.
If you're not, there's no point in driving more traffic because customers are going to click, as mentioned, and decide not to purchase. So you're going to rake up your spend, but not your sales. No advertiser can fix that, right? So I think that's the biggest thing is advertising before their conversion rate's ready.
That's really good. And that makes sense. No matter how many times I feel like, I mean, like we said, we've been in this industry for a long time. I feel like conversion rate has been one of those things that's been talked about for ages. Yeah. And it's still like, it still is such a big area for improvement for people.
Yeah.
And it still plays such an important role.
Yeah.
If I'll open the door for one more category that talking about profitability, and this will be landing the plane category. If you were to bring up, if there's one more category people should be aware of when it comes to profitability, what do you think that should be?
Now you have me nervous. I'm not sure. I feel like I should open up my notes tab.
One of the others that, like any other area having to do with profitability that we haven't covered, like organic sales, bid management, conversion rate,
keyword research.
Okay. Why did that come to mind? Why is that important?
Because I was going back to our protein example and our conversion rate example, and they're directly correlated. A lot of people want to go after their main keyword, right? It's almost ego. It's exciting to see your ad at the top of the page for the highest traffic keyword, but it's also the most competitive almost across the board, right? So I think a really big thing, especially for new sellers that are solely focused on profitability, is maybe find the long tail keyword that you're going to convert better on. Let's use protein, for example. If someone types in protein, you don't know if they want vegan protein or vanilla protein or chocolate protein. It's really broad. So now your product is being compared to every other protein in the category, and it's going to be a lot harder to compete. Versus if I sell a vegan vanilla protein for women, I know if someone types in that search term, they're looking for exactly what my product is. The search volume is going to be a lot lower. There's not as many vegan women searching for vanilla protein, I can guarantee you. But the search term is exactly what your product is, meaning women are probably searching and more than likely going to buy your protein. So your conversion rate can be a lot higher. So again, it's a real estate trade-off. You're getting less traffic, less clicks, but higher profitability.
I like the nuance of that, especially like, you know, a lot of this does boil down to like cash you have to spend on these types of things, right? Yes. And if you know so that dependent. So dependent on that. And like the Coca-Colas have essentially unlimited budget to spend on some of these things, but there still are places that you can go if you don't have that money. I had another conversation with another seller recently for the podcast about like the aspect of branding. It was like leveraging AI to use in like listing ops and like things like that. And that conversation kind of switched gears into like the core of that aspect is like understanding your brand and understanding who your target audience is. I feel like this keyword conversation, there are some very like logistical things like finding those strategic keywords, but I feel like a very core part of this conversation of effective advertising, especially this keyword thing, but especially everything else, is knowing who you're going after. Yes. Like knowing who your target audience is. And without understanding who your target audience is, I feel like that just the nuance of advertising becomes a whole lot more difficult. You don't have those levers to get more dialed in on your audience that you're advertising.
100%. I mean, using that example we just gave, if your listing is curated specifically for females, your conversion rate's going to be higher for females because they're going to resonate. They're going to look at it and be like, oh, this person understands my problems. Much more likely to convert. And I think that is the value AI is driven, is it's allowed smaller sellers to be a lot more reactive and move a lot quicker than maybe what large brands are trying to sell to everyone, right? They're over generalizing their branding to try to sell to everyone. Small sellers have the opportunity to build custom creatives and graphics that really relate to every specific audience with the power of AI, right? We've never had that before. And I'll shout out Sponsor Brand's generative AI and advertising console now. We have a seller that is a typical private label seller, but I think they have over 1,000 ASINs, and like 500 of those ASINs were holiday specific. It was like random variations. we were able to use sponsored brands, generative AI, to take every single one of our headlines and add a Christmas tree or a snowflake to the images. And it took less than a day because we had a really simple model with AI to add an image to our product, and our click-through and conversion rate went up. Because again, everyone searching for a product saw that our product was related to their holiday shopping needs. So the click-through rate was higher.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. I'm going to ask one more question here revolving around this, and that's like speculation, of course. Obviously, things have changed so much, and like the implications of, well, like you were just talking about AI, the implications of like nuanced advertising, the implications are that things are just going to change very, very fast, and they already have. Destaney, where do you see, this is where do you see things going question? How do you see things changing? How do you see things truly, like, what's the impact of all this as time goes on for this industry?
It's exhausting. Things change so fast. And I don't think it's going to slow down. So, just talking about building teams, you need thought leaders and experts on your teams to keep up with all the industry changes. Historically, in order to build a large company, it was heavily SOP'd and there wasn't a lot of deviation. Nowadays, you can't do that. I mean, on our end, there's an Amazon advertising rollout pretty much every 2 weeks. And if I have my team following SOPs blindly, we're behind. So I think like operationally, culturally, it's going to drive a big change. And then for brands specifically, I think creative and connecting with your audience is going to become so, so important. You have to stand out on the page, and anyone and everyone can start a brand nowadays. Truly, 17-year-old in high school can have an iPhone, send an email to a supplier, and start drop shipping products. And that's the world we're dealing with. So you're not special if you're able to do that. You're special if you're able to connect with an audience, build a creative and a product people want. And I think that's what's going to stand out, right? It's no longer anything and everything products. It's products that connect in brand builders that make a difference.
Yep, I see that. I think you're right. I don't think it's going to slow down that importance of connection. Like the organic, the relationship between organic and paid media, I feel like is a good symbol of a relationship between a brand and its core audience, and how like organic connection will continue to play a really big role in the way that the way that people buy from brands. I think younger audiences are going to become more and more intelligent buyers. And I think that plays into this as well.
100%. They have access to all the information in the world you could ever need.
Yeah.
Like, not only can they start companies from their iPhone in school, but they can also do so much more due diligence. I mean, we joked around about my LinkedIn network earlier, and it's just, you have the ability to connect with any CEO you want and to follow. And I think that connection makes a difference.
I think it does. I really think it does too. I'm going to switch gears. One more question. I'll have to have you back on to talk about
one more question.
Better Media. Well, yeah. Okay. I lied. But I want to have you back on to talk about Better Media and everything that's like the work and the story that it took to get to where you are now and where you're headed. Because it's very exciting and it's a really cool success story. But this is a very big gear shift, and this is more of a personal one, but it's around habits or practice. So, Destaney, obviously, like you have come very far and like you've built something really incredible. What personal habit or practice would you say, impacted your life and or your business the most to build what you've built?
Being really selective with the people I chose to surround myself with. And I'm going to throw it out there because in the very early stages of figuring out entrepreneurship was during COVID. And I built a really strong brand presence online, and it was cool, but I didn't have the personal connection. My friends and family back home didn't quite understand what I was doing. I didn't have the support there that maybe I could have. I got invited to my first event. I wasn't going to go because I was scared and intimidated to meet everyone. My CEO booked my ticket and basically said, no, you're going, you're going to figure it out. And now, I mean, Cameron, we have so many friends in the space and such a close community that support system has given me the confidence and ability to be where I am. Like, if I ever have any questions, there's someone I can call up and ask. If I'm ever nervous or self-conscious, there's someone I can call up and get support to. And that
That's so cool.
was the biggest. I had to level up. I had to let go of people in order to bring more people in, but it was a game changer.
Yeah, and that's so cool. And what a great decision to be forced to go to that one event.
Truly.
Yeah. To be forced to go. Truly. That's like a really important step, and that's really cool. That's great to have a support system like that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very applicable to people listening, no matter what they're building, to have a support system. There's a lot to also being surrounded by people that you don't necessarily feel like are your people is like a wrong way of putting it, but it's like surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded, building something that you're similar to what you're trying to build as well. There's a lot to that.
Yeah.
Destaney, we're at time, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to have you on podcasts and shows, your wealth of knowledge. I'll link all your information in the show notes, because if you're not one of those 40,000 people following Destaney on LinkedIn, you need to be.
I better get
Destaney,
to 50 after this. That's all I'm
honestly, hey, if it happens, we'll know where they come. We'll know where they come from.
It's
but Destaney,
from
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Human in the Loop. My name is Cameron. I hope you enjoyed that discussion with Destaney. Profitability is a big focus. It needs to be, and it's very nuanced. It's much more nuanced than I honestly anticipated even going into this conversation. I said this in the beginning, but if you're not following Destaney, you need to be. I'll link to her information in the show notes below. I'm so glad you joined me today. If you haven't yet, follow us also on social to keep up with the latest of what we're putting out, what we're releasing. And until next time, I'll see you on next week's episode of Human in the Loop.